subscribe now and press the bell icon. Never miss an update.
Hello all. As promised under our guided self-study program, we have delivered 2 quality improvement classes already. One is on the subject of polity and the second is on the methods which have to be followed by an aspirant while solving a UPSC question paper. Now the third lecture in the series is on history. Okay, history is one of the important sections in UPSC, and usually the questions from history, they range from 15 questions to 20 questions every year. So history is one of the important sections in preliminary examination, and having a decent enough mastery over history is a non-negotiable term for clearing the UPSC preliminary examination. And when it comes to history, we can broadly subdivide the history into 3 sections. One section is on art and culture. The second section is ancient and medieval India, and the third section is modern India. The current video, we are going to deal with one section, that is art and culture, and the second section, that is ancient and medieval, and modern India will form part of another video. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to have a look at how ancient and medieval India and art and culture, what are the trends which are present in these sections, okay, how the UPSC questions have changed over a period of time, and what kind of questions are being asked from these sections. First we will have a look at the trends, then after that we will suggest some tips for aspirants in order to properly concentrate upon the required areas in ancient India and ancient and medieval India along with art and culture. When it comes to art and culture, it has gained a lot of significance post 2011. In 2011, they suddenly shifted gears and they started concentrating more and more on the section called art and culture. And art and culture, it forms one of the important sections of preliminary examination today. See, some sections like art and culture, science and technology, and environment, these 3 sections form the major share of preliminary examination nowadays. And having a mastery over these subjects, these 3 sections will automatically help you to sail through the preliminary examination. Rather than concentrating more upon the traditional subjects, these dynamic areas also should be concentrated upon. When it comes to art and culture has been one of the toughest area for aspirants over the years because of the nature of the subject on one side and unavailability of resources for the said subject. Okay, that is the second problem that usually aspirants faced while dealing with art and culture. Then the third problem was that UPSC is moving very fast in art and culture. They are regularly changing the trends of asking questions. Okay, how they are changing and other factors with respect to art and culture, we will have a discussion about it first. And when it comes to art and culture, we are going to subdivide our discussion into properly 4 sections in art and culture. The first section is the section related to religion. The second section is to do with Bhakti and Sufi traditions. The third section, it will deal with the folk traditions of India, whereas the fourth section, that is, it is going to deal with the fourth section will deal on the classical traditions of India. How the questions are being asked in these 4 subsections, we'll have a discussion about. First and foremost, we'll start with religion, because religion forms a central element of art and culture. Religion, in fact, it forms the basis for the evolution of art and culture in India. Now, when it comes to religion, UPSC has concentrated upon various facets of religion over the years, and the trend in UPSC is very clear with respect to religion. See, one thing is, before 2011, they used to ask rather simple questions on the biographies of the people who founded the dominant religions in India. Okay, when it comes to this, you can have a look at the questions. Okay, for example, I am going to quote one question which has been asked before 2011. Okay, there was a question which goes this way: in which way Sarnathai is associated with Lord Buddha? Okay, this is the question. So when it comes to this question, this is a rather simple question now. Okay, we'll directly know that Sarnathai is the place where Buddha gave his first sermon. So this kind of biography related questions, who is the father of Buddha, who is the mother of Buddha, who is the wife of Buddha, and Mahavira and his relations, all of these kind of questions used to be asked prior to 2011. Then after that, suddenly in 2011, they started moving towards, from the biographies, the niceties of the said religions. Okay, niceties of said religions and the philosophical aspects of the said religions, they started concentrating upon. If you have a look at the questions, they started asking questions like, what is the meaning, which of the following terms best describes the concept nirvana in Buddhism? what is the exact meaning of nirvana in Buddhism? They started asking questions. Then after that, there was a question on Kaivalya Gnan. Then apart from that, they also asked questions like according to Jainism, okay, what is the nature of universe according to Jainism? These kind of philosophical questions they started asking more and more post 2011, wherein the student has to concentrate more upon what is the exact sayings which are done by, or what is the nature of the philosophy of these religions they have to concentrate upon. So then this was one more trend, and they continued this trend from 2011 to 2015. But 2015 is one more major break with respect to art and culture in this section. Okay, what they started doing is they started moving away from the central doctrine of the religion to the various subsects of a given religion. Okay, as part of this section, what they started doing, they started concentrating upon the subsects. Okay, for example, I will show a question, okay, wherein it talks about Sarvastivadins. Along with Sarvastivadins, they also asked about Sautrantikas and Sammatiyas. Okay, which school does these philosophies belong to? And they also asked about the central philosophy of Sarvastivada. And apart from this, there is a question in 2019. The question is on Mahayana sect of Buddhism. It means that from the central doctrine of Buddhism, they started moving towards the subsects of Buddhism. It is the same with Jainism too. They started moving away from the central doctrine of Jainism to the subsects of Jainism. So in this fashion, they have moved the trend from the biography related questions 1. Then they started moving towards philosophical questions of a said religion, and now the third section is they started asking questions on the subsects of a given religion. So this is how UPSC has changed the trend. How to handle these questions we will discuss as part of our tips. Now moving on to the next section. Next section is on Bhakti and Sufi. In Bhakti and Sufi also we saw a similar change in trend in UPSC. Before 2011 they used to ask questions on geographical distribution of Bhakti and Sufi saints. Okay, they used to ask to which region a particular saint belongs to. There were some rather simple questions like the region to which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu belonged to. Okay, then apart from that, there was also a question on the writings of the said gurus. Okay, now this is one question that I am going to show, which talks about which of the following pairs is correctly matched. It talks about the various Sikh gurus and their contributions. So this is one more type of question which used to be asked before 2011. These are directly factual based questions without any much of analysis. Okay, much of analysis is not required for solving these kind of questions. Then after 2011, what they started doing, they started moving away from these kind of questions and they started asking questions on the understanding about the writings of the various Bhakti saints. What is the nature of philosophy of these Bhakti saints? This started becoming the central theme of the UPSC questions. I'll show one more question on this. This question, it talks about the Siddhas and Lingayats. Siddhas and Lingayats and their core philosophy and ideology they started concentrating upon. Then apart from that, they also started concentrating upon the various ideologies which were present during Bhakti and Sufi movement. They asked a question on Ramanujacharya, Shankaracharya, these kind of questions, and their ideology started becoming central theme in UPSC. Now what they did, then post 2015 there is one more shift in UPSC. What they started asking is they started asking or checking the students' chronological understanding of Bhakti and Sufi movement. What they started asking questions like which of the following Bhakti or Sufi saint was present when Babar was establishing his empire in India? They are asking a contemporary saint to Babar. Now we know that it is Guru Nanak. Okay, in a similar fashion, last year in 2019 they asked this question. They asked a question on Saint Nimbaraka, whether he is a contemporary of Akbar or not. You have to very clearly know that Akbar, he belongs to 16th century, 16th century, whereas this person Nimbaraka, he belongs to 12th, 13th century. So there is a lot of difference between these two people. So Saint Nimbaraka and Akbar's contemporariness, then along with that Saint Kabir and Sheikh Ahmad Sarhindi, they are both contemporaries. This was one more statement which was given in this question, and they are not both contemporaries because Saint Kabir, he belongs to the Delhi Sultanate period, Ahmad Sarhindi belongs to the Akbar's period. These kind of contemporary understanding or the historical chronological understanding is required to solve these kind of questions. So there is a particular method which can be followed to solve these kind of questions. We will talk about it. Now when it comes to these kind of questions, now in Bhakti and Sufi also we have seen clearly, first they asked geographical and writing based questions, then understanding understanding based questions. Now chronology and contemporary based questions were being asked in UPSC. So this is one more changing trend in Bhakti and Sufi movement. Then when it comes to the third section, the third section is folk traditions. Folk traditions started gaining more and more prominence from 2013 on. From 2013 on, they started concentrating upon the folk traditions of India as part of culture. And luckily for us, these folk traditions, they are not going to ask questions in depth about these folk traditions. What is the nature of these folk traditions? Who is the central deity? What kind of cultural practices are followed as part of these folk traditions? These kind of questions they don't ask. But what they do is they ask you to directly identify the folk tradition to a given geographical region. This is the nature of the questions which has been asked from 2013 on, and luckily for us, this tradition, it has not stopped. It is continuing the same way. Okay, for example, we can take a question which talked about Mohini Attam, Yakshagana and Garba. Okay, these three traditions which are present, Garba, Yakshagana and Mohini Attam, and they asked about which areas they belong to. Yakshagana, we know right now it belongs to Karnataka, Mohini Attam, Odisha, and Garba, it belongs to Gujarat region. So in this fashion, we have an understanding now. It means that they are asking just the the geographical location of a given folk tradition. Then apart from that, I can show one more example which talks about the Kalamkari painting tradition and which area it belongs to. This Kalamkari painting tradition also, it belongs to the Machilipatnam region of Andhra Pradesh. So this is one more example of how these questions are being asked. Folk tradition questions, predominantly there has been just one single theme which talks about the the geographical location based matching of a folk tradition with the given region. So this is how the questions have been asked. Now when you move to the classical traditions, in classical traditions we can find various subsets of classical traditions. One thing is they asked about the personalities who are associated with these classical traditions. This has become a prominent trend. Then apart from the personalities, they also concentrated upon the prominent forms in which these classical traditions are represented. Then apart from that, there is also question on the geographical distribution of these classical traditions across India. These kind of questions are being asked. And now when we look at the personalities, we have seen in the previous years there was one question on Mian Tansen, okay, in 2019. Then just before that, they asked a question on Tyagaraja on one side and comparison of Tyagaraja, or they started comparing the chronology of Tyagaraja with Annamacharya. This kind of question also came in UPSC. So Tyagaraja Kritis, one question, and the other question is on Mian Tansen. Okay, both of these questions are displayed. So prominent personalities who are associated with these classical traditions, they are very important for us. So both these questions, they are on classical music. Both of these questions are on classical music. But apart from classical music, there are many other traditions too. Let's suppose Urdu poetry is there. Amir Khusro is a major proponent. So in this format, we have to concentrate upon the personalities who are associated with these classical traditions. This is one trend. And when it comes to the second one, which is the second trend, it talks about what the major forms in which this particular major forms are the prominent examples of a given classical tradition. Okay, there was a question on Banithani. Okay, Banithani and which school of painting it belongs to. Which school of painting it belongs to? It belongs to Kishangarh school of painting. It means that every classical tradition, it has its best expression, and where this best expression is found and what is the nature of this best expression also is something which we have to concentrate upon. Okay, which we have to concentrate upon. And next, after that, when you go to the third section, which is talking about the geographical distribution of a given tradition. The geographical distribution of a given tradition, here also similarly, there was a question on Padmapani. Where is the painting of Bodhisattva Padmapani located in India? Okay, the answer is Ajanta. The answer is Ajanta, and this question also tries to concentrate upon the geography in which a classical tradition is best expressed. So one thing is we have to concentrate upon the personalities in classical tradition. The second thing is the prominent forms of this classical tradition we have to concentrate upon, and the third thing that we have to concentrate upon is the geographical distribution in which these classical traditions are practiced. So in these three sections, the classical traditions have to be looked into. So this is one more trend in UPSC. So in art and culture, we have discussed a total of 4 trends. One is religion, wherein they move towards the subsects. Bhakti and Sufi movement, they move towards the chronology. Then the third one is folk traditions. They are sticking to the geographical distribution of a said folk tradition. Then fourth one, we are talking about the classical traditions of ancient India. The classical tradition of ancient India, and in classical traditions we have seen that they are concentrating upon one, personalities, and apart from personalities they are concentrating upon prominent forms, and the third one is the geographical distribution of the prominent forms. These are the major trends in art and culture. If you concentrate upon these areas, then automatically you will be able to score more. Then when it comes to the trends in ancient and medieval India, see, when it comes to the questions in ancient and medieval India, at one point of time before 2011, ancient and medieval India formed a significant chunk of prelims paper questions. Now after 2011 there is a shift in pattern. After that they started moving more towards art and culture, and modern India became central themes in the paper. When you look at the previous year's papers too, the paper of UPSC in 2018, it contained just 2 questions in ancient and medieval India, whereas the paper in 2019 it contained 5 questions. UPSC has very clearly understood that students have started neglecting ancient and medieval India. That's why I can very clearly sense that UPSC is going to concentrate more and more upon ancient and medieval India from now on. From now on, they are going to concentrate more and more upon ancient and medieval India, and this section it is tough because of the vastness of syllabus. Okay, you have to read a lot of stuff in ancient medieval India, and usually it is said that the cost benefit analysis for ancient and medieval India is less. Okay, it is less definitely when there are only 1 or 2 questions, but when there are 5 questions, then automatically it becomes more important. But the method to read ancient and medieval India is also something which has changed. Now first we will have a look at the trends in ancient and medieval India, then after that we can concentrate upon the tips which are to be followed while reading ancient and medieval India. So when it comes to ancient and medieval India, we divided the ancient and medieval India into some 4 sections. Similarly, the first section it talks about administrative and economic institutions. The second section it talks about science and technology. The third section it talks about foreign travelers, and the fourth section it talks about broader themes in ancient and medieval India. Now first we will have a look at the first section, which is administrative and economic institutions. This section is very important with respect to ancient and medieval India, because rather than concentrating upon people, they started concentrating upon the institutions which are present in ancient and medieval India. When it comes to these institutions, you have various kinds of institutions. Economic institutions are there, political institutions are there, administrative institutions are there. My guess is that going ahead to this section will become very important, and we have to concentrate upon these areas, and there is a need for crystal clear clarity on these sections, because these sections they are technically a little bit have a lot of subdivisions or sub themes are present technically. When you look at the administrative and economic institutions, they are concentrated upon exactly these technicalities of these administrative and economic institutions. For example, if we take look at the economic institutions of ancient India, they asked a question in 2013 on Shrenis or guilds in ancient India. They asked a question, and if you have a look at the 3 options which are, or the 3 statements which are associated with this, they are not just concentrating upon the meaning of Shreni or guild. They are asking about the exact functionality of a Shreni or a guild. So this is one section which you can see that the institutions mechanism and functioning is concentrated upon. Then apart from that, if you look at the administrative institutions, there are institutions for correction of land revenue. This land revenue is a very important section in ancient and medieval India. What kind of systems were followed by the various rulers? Because we have seen numerous questions on the administrative measures which are taken by various rulers on land revenue system in ancient and medieval India. As part of this, they asked a question last year on the Jagirdar and Jamindar system. This question is one of the most controversial question. In fact, most of the institutions also they gave multiple answers with respect to this Jagirdari and Jamindari question. And this Jagirdari and Jamindari question, it points to the intention of UPSC. It very clearly shows that you need to understand the Jagirdari system in a crystal clear manner. Okay, the Jagirdar system, Mansabdar system, how they are different, how these two are dependent upon the Jamindari system. All of these technical aspects you need to have a lot of clarity about. Then when it comes to the third format in the administrative and economic institutions, okay, they have also concentrated upon the key terms which are associated with these institutions. When it comes to the key terms, what they did, they concentrated upon areas like Vishti. Okay, Vishti, which is a very prominent institution in ancient Indian Guptan age. Okay, this question it shows that their concentration they also focused upon some of the key terms and important terminologies of ancient and medieval India. So the things that you have to concentrate upon is one, the administrative and economic institutions which are present in ancient and medieval India. Rather than concentrating upon the kings, it is better to read these things. Then apart from that, you have to concentrate upon the key terms wherever they are present. Okay, some technical terms will be there like this, okay, which is Vishti. Then apart from that, they also concentrate upon some of the technical terms like Banjaras, okay, which is also a economic institution. They are grain carriers in medieval India. Then apart from that, they are also concentrated upon areas like Magadas, what is their role. Then this is a system called Panchayatan system. These kind of various administrative and economic institutions based, technical terms based questions are also being asked. So this is one section that you have to concentrate upon. Then apart from that, if you look at the second important theme in ancient and medieval India, they are concentrating upon science and technology. When it comes to science and technology, I can give you 3 examples. One question is on Babur. At the time of invasion of Babur, what kind of technology he brought into India, whether he is the one to use gunpowder first in India or not. This was one question which has been asked. Then there was one more question on irrigation technology which is based on Aragatta. Okay, Aragatta based irrigation technology question was also asked at one point of time. Then apart from that, there was one more question on the contributions of ancient Indian scientists. Okay, there was a question on surgical instruments. Okay, then apart from that, concept of sine, cyclical quadrilateral, these kind of things are also asked as part of UPSC preliminary. So one area of interest in ancient medieval India is the institutions. The second area of interest is science and technology. Okay, this is one more trend in UPSC preliminary. Then the third section which you have to concentrate upon is foreign travelers. Foreign travelers have become very, very important with respect to both preliminary and mains. Even in mains, they asked a question on the foreign travelers accounts. When it comes to the preliminary, this question is the most prominent example, the question on Huansang. Huansang question they asked, and his observations on India they asked. His observations on India they asked. So in this fashion, you have to make a list of all foreign travelers to India and make a list about their observations on India. Okay, before year there was a question on Tavernier. What was the role of Tavernier in medieval India? He is a jewelry businessman. Okay, so in this fashion, or diamond merchant rather than jewelry businessman, he is a diamond merchant. So in this fashion, they are concentrating upon the works of foreign travelers, their writings. Okay, what did they observe in ancient and medieval India? These sections are also very important, So one area, so there are 3 areas that we discussed: institutions, science and technology, foreign travelers. Then the fourth important area is the broader themes in ancient and medieval India. The broader themes in ancient and medieval India, wherein they asked about some of the important sections of ancient and medieval India. See, they asked a question on Malavikagnimithram. It deals with the story of which of the following dynasties. Okay, it was talking about the Sungas. Then apart from that, in this kind of broader themes itself, we can have a look at some more questions which have been concentrated upon some sections. Okay, some sections like they asked a question on the establishment of Vijayanagara Empire. Okay, establishment of Vijayanagara Empire. They asked a question on the religious policies of Akbar. There are a few broader themes in history, and if you have a fairer understanding about the entire story of history, then automatically you will be able to solve these kind of questions. So this is one more type, and they also asked to arrange some events in chronological order. These kind of questions also have been asked. So you have to concentrate upon the broader themes in history, not any specifics, but the broader themes. How is the flow of history from one age to another? What are the major events which occurred in this flow of history? That is something which you need to know. Okay, these are the 4 sections in ancient medieval India. I'll repeat them. Institutions is one, science and technology is second, foreign travelers is the third one, and the fourth one is the broader themes in history. So in this fashion, these are the 4 sections in ancient and medieval India. So these are some of the trends which you have to concentrate upon. Now we are going to discuss about the tips which have to be followed while reading history. Okay, history as a subject, as pointed out earlier, it is a very, very dynamic subject. Even though the content it remains the same, the concentration of UPSC, it is continuously shifting from one area to another. The concentration is continuously shifting. So when we have a look at the tips which have to be followed while reading history, see, one thing is there is a popular misconception. Okay, I have made a total of 9 tips. The first and foremost one is the apprehension that people have that history is all about facts. You have to cram a lot of facts in order to understand or in order to correctly solve history based questions. But this is a very wrong perception or notion of history, because in history, if you have a fair understanding of the past, okay, if you have read it once or twice, automatically they will get stored in your memory for quite long term. And if you are familiar with a term, your probability of answering a question on the term is very high in history. Okay, once you have to understand the concept in a crystal clear manner, then automatically you will be able to remember facts. It is not very difficult and you need not sit and cram any facts. Be familiar with the facts, okay, then automatically you will be able to solve the question. So this is my first tip, that you should be familiar with facts and you should not cram them. Okay, this is the first tip. And when it comes to the second tip, okay, second tip is when it comes to ancient and medieval India and art and culture, some of the questions, they were very, very tough. Okay, in fact, most of the history teachers will also not be able to solve these questions with a complete understanding of the broader origins which are present for this subject. Okay, it is impossible for any aspirant to have an aim of achieving 100% correct in history, because they can ask from various sections of history and it is impossible for a person to track down exactly, okay, these sections and read them, and no one source can possibly help you in solving all the questions in ancient India and art and culture. So it is better whenever there is too much of a tough question, okay, wherein a term is used which you did not hear to at any point of time in your life, then automatically you have to duck for these questions. Okay, whenever a bouncer comes in the prelims paper, you have to duck. You should not try to hit that ball. Okay, please leave out some questions which seem very, very tough in ancient and medieval India and art and culture, because most of the people also do the same. We should not lose out marks where the question is not in our range. So this is the second tip, that don't attempt indiscriminately in history. This is my second tip. And when it comes to third tip, okay, the third tip is very, very simple one, but which has not been followed by most of the aspirants. The thing is, you have to focus upon the previous year question papers. See, surprisingly, UPSC has repeated a lot of questions from previous years now. Okay, you have to have a thorough understanding of the previous year questions. I can name some questions. There is a repetition of a question in 2 consecutive years. There is a question on Gautama Buddha. Okay, which of the geographical areas he visited during his lifetime. This was a question which repeated in consecutive years. Then apart from that, there is a question on Nastalik. The Nastalik question, it has repeated from 1996 to 2015. So in this fashion, they are repeating some themes in history. So it would be a very good method, for you to first go through all the previous year questions very regularly. One thing is, if you are very lucky, then the previous year question will be repeated. If you are unlucky to, okay, let's suppose there is no previous year question which has been repeated in the current paper, but at least you will get an understanding that what UPSC is concentrating upon. Your entire preparation will get oriented towards the previous year UPSC question papers. So this is the third tip, that you have to regularly go through the previous year question papers, either before reading a chapter or after reading a chapter. Go through the previous year's chapter wise questions book, okay, so that you will be able to orient your preparation properly to UPSC standards. This is the third tip. And when you go to the fourth tip, okay, fourth tip is with respect to history, there are multiple number of resources. Okay, nowadays there is a proliferation of resources. Okay, so many resources are there. People are prescribing books like old NCRTs, new NCRTs. Then apart from that, Tamil Nadu state NCRT textbooks, okay, state books. Then apart from that, they are suggesting books like Nitin Singhania, CCRT, NIOS. Okay, there are so many books with respect to art and culture and ancient medieval India that students are getting lost in these resources. Okay, so that is the reason why what you have to do is, first you have to narrow down on your resources. Don't run behind multiple sources at any point of time. If you run behind multiple sources, you will not be able to consolidate by the time of the examination. So that is the reason why don't ever run behind the multiple sources. One thing that I suggest with respect to art and culture and ancient and medieval India is, stick to few sources. Don't run behind multiple sources with respect to these sections in history. Okay, this is the fourth tip. Then the fifth one is that you should never lose out on easy questions. Some questions which are coming directly from said resources. Let's suppose there is a new NCRT textbook in the Introduction to Indian Art. Most of the students might have read it. If you lose out on these kind of simple questions, then your possibility of clearing preliminary, it will go down, because rest of the country, they will definitely do this question very correctly. So you should never miss out on easy questions in history. Okay, there are many easy questions which are also being asked as part of history. There are some direct questions too. So these kind of questions you should never miss out on. This is my fifth tip. Okay, then when it comes to the sixth one, Students usually tend to, over the years I have seen many students, whenever they feel uncomfortable with some sections of the syllabus, they are leaving them out. They are not concentrating upon the gray areas in their preparation. And UPSC very clearly knows that where the UPSC market is going. The market is going towards easier sections of history. That is the reason why they will move towards the gray areas. Okay, so when it comes to this, the recent shift in history approach, the approach of history, the approach of UPSC towards history, if you see, they have moved towards ancient and medieval India, because the students have completely left out ancient and medieval India. Okay, they started thinking that there will be 1 or 2 questions. Why should we concentrate upon this section? And they are talking about cost benefit analysis. Now UPSC has increase the cost of leaving out ancient and medieval India. Last year there were 5 questions. Okay, if you are not familiar with ancient and medieval India, automatically it will become very difficult for you to solve these kind of questions. So wherever there are gray areas, please concentrate upon them. Some sections which are more important like art and culture and ancient and medieval India, you have to concentrate upon them. Then apart from this, the 7th tip that I am going to give is about having a genuine interest in the subject. Okay, having a genuine interest in the subject is very essential in order to solve UPSC question papers. When it comes to having genuine interest, okay, some of the students, they tend to have an attachment with the subject. These kind of people, they usually are able to solve most of the preliminary questions, because UPSC has started moving away from the standard textbooks. They are going beyond books for these kind of questions. When it comes to going beyond books, these UPSC paper setters, what they are doing is, okay, according to my understanding of paper setting standards, I have very clearly seen that some of the statements they have directly picked from Google searches. They have moved beyond the book. They started picking up the names which are present in your NCERT textbook. Let's take the case of Tansen. The Tansen's question, okay, they have given that Mian Tansen. Okay, this question definitely they have picked it up from Google. Okay, because no prominent textbook it discusses thoroughly about the title of Tansen. The title of Tansen. So now this way, if UPSC itself is taking interest in a given subject by taking the extra mile of searching about some personalities, then the students also automatically have to mimic the same thing. If you have an attachment with the subject, and if you are able to spend some time googling about some of the facts and interesting events in history, then automatically you will be able to solve the questions. Okay, this is one more tip that I am giving. Then apart from that, when it comes to the sources, for ancient and medieval India along with art and culture, first and primary source is you have to follow Introduction to Indian Art. Then apart from Introduction to Indian Art, you have to have a look at Living Craft Traditions of India, which is a class 11th textbook. This Living Craft Traditions of India, directly from this textbook there are many questions. For example, the question on Kalamkari art, there is a separate chapter on Kalamkari art in Living Craft Traditions of India. So you have to definitely concentrate upon the Living Craft Traditions of India. Then apart from that, you have to read all the new NCERTs. Let's suppose our past 1, 2, 3 you have to concentrate upon. Then themes in Indian history 1, 2, 3 you have to concentrate upon, because there were many questions which were directly picked from these sections. Then apart from that, for a generalized understanding on ancient and medieval India, because our past and themes, they don't pick up history in a chronological format. They will pick up separate themes in history and they discuss them. So for just chronological understanding of history, you can have a look at Tamil Nadu state textbooks of 11th standard for ancient and medieval India. You will get a broad understanding about the contours of history of ancient and medieval India from these textbooks. So you can concentrate upon Tamil Nadu 11th standard textbooks. Then apart from that, have a cursory reading of Nitin Singhania, particularly with respect to the classical traditions. So these are the 6 things that you have to concentrate upon. One is you have to concentrate upon Introduction to Indian Art, Living Craft Traditions of India. Then apart from the Living Craft Traditions of India, you have to concentrate upon the books like Our Past. Then apart from Our Past, you have to concentrate upon the themes. Have a look at the Tamil Nadu state NCERT textbooks and use them just as reference of the 11th standard textbooks. Then apart from that, you have a look at Nitin Singhania. Then apart from that, when it comes to having a clear-cut knowledge about history, the last tip of mine is that you have to be very innovative in increasing your cranial capacity and your absorption capability of the facts in history. There are many innovative methods in which you can possibly remember these facts. Okay, for example, I will show one example wherein through map you will be able to remember most of the folk traditions. As pointed out earlier, most of the folk traditions, they are concentrating upon the geographical region to which a particular folk tradition belongs to. Yes or no? So for this reason, what you can do is you can pick up all the possible folk traditions. Okay, folk martial arts are there, folk dance is there, folk drama is there. Then apart from, folk music is there. And UNESCO list of tangible heritage sites and intangible heritage sites. For all these sections, you can make state-wise maps. Okay, you can buy a political map of India along with the states. There itself you can write where this particular tradition belongs to. That way you will be able to save a lot of time while revising this section too, and your spatial memory, it will work always better than your regular linear memory. Spatial memory, it always works better. So you make maps for this. Then apart from this, I'm showing one more diagram. This diagram talks about the various subsects of Buddhism. In this format, if you can make tree diagrams on subsects of Buddhism and their philosophies, they are also very, very important. These kind of techniques, innovative techniques, should be used in order to better retain the information which you are reading with as part of history. So there are a total of 9 tips. These concentrate upon the sources of history, what things to be concentrated upon, what things should be avoided in the examination. All of these things are talked about in these tips. Okay, this finishes the video. Thank you.